Good morning, everyone. This is Kendall Askins from Stimulating Minds. Askins Stimulates over on Instagram. Joining you another morning with another gem to drop. And this morning we're going to jump right into it. I want to talk to you guys about communication. This is a hot topic, right? Like, everybody's always talking about communication, I feel, and especially when it comes to relationships. Again, I've emphasized in these videos that relationships do not only have to be romantic, but any type of relationship, whether it's parental, friendship, cordial, work-related, romantic, any relationship, you have to communicate, right? And we know there's different forms of communication and different ways that people communicate. But what I've noticed over time is that we often focus on how we are being understood when we talk about communication. So, for example, you might have heard people say, listen twice as much as you speak, right? And we talk about how people are often listening to respond. And that's when we're talking about how we are being understood. Because people are listening to respond, they're not actually listening to what we're saying, but they're listening to hear how they can then make their point or use what we said to make their point. So I think that's been covered almost, as much as it can be covered. But one of the things that I've realized is that communication is also with our delivery, right? Like how we are not only putting something out, but how we are also understanding what is being said. And so this made me think a lot because in order to have effective communication, you need two people that are not only open to hearing what the other person is saying, but also open to receiving what the other person is saying. I've been in conversations often, whether it's at work, whether it's somewhere else, whatever it is, where when people are speaking, and before I really went on this healing journey, where when people were speaking to me, even though I was hearing what they were saying, I was truly listening, I often was trying to get them to agree with me. And so my responses were often cultivated at trying to shift their perspective or trying to make them more so understand what I was saying. And as a result, what would happen is we would be going back and forth, right? Because every time they would say something that I would say, no, they're disagreeing, I would say, no, you're not understanding, and keep going. And what I've begun to shift to do is actually, when I'm listening to them, not necessarily trying to convince them to agree with me, but really listening to what they're saying and figuring out in that moment what I am able to offer, right? So in some conversations, they're looking for solutions. And so I might be able to offer a solution in that moment or have an idea. In some conversations, it does require clarity, right? Sometimes at work, it requires me to clarify something for somebody, or even in a personal relationship, it might require clarity. And sometimes it's somebody communicating to me something I can do better, and it doesn't require a defense or me to express. Sometimes it is that somebody might have done something that bothered me and I expressed it to them, and they're trying to explain to me, and I don't need that, right? So I'm just sharing out what I'm trying to share out here is that there's a subtle part of communication that I think we often miss, and that is how we communicate with other people, right? Like, is our message getting lost in maybe whether it's the delivery or whether it's missing the mark? I know the other day I had a conversation with somebody, and they were in a space where they were, I guess, venting. And in that venting, I went and offered a solution, and then I realized that that person wasn't looking for solutions in that moment, right? They were just like, because every solution that I was offering, they were telling me why that solution wouldn't work. And so at that point, instead of feeling frustrated, right, I just stopped talking and let them say what they had to say, because what they were communicating to me, even though it was indirectly, was that that's not what they were looking for. And so in order to not be frustrated myself, or to be able to move the conversation along, I stopped, right? And what I noticed is that it shifted, because then the conversation was able to stop. I didn't want to sit there and listen to just complaining, right? And that person got the feeling that I didn't want to listen to just complaining. And so even though they said that, they thanked me for listening, and then they stopped. And so often I think it's worth us stopping and evaluating the ways that we communicate without having to necessarily say or get frustrated or shut down because something is not going the way that we want it to go. So I hope this makes some sense, and that this is a little bit of a new perspective. We can control that narrative. We can make sure that we're communicating our points very clearly. And while, yes, it is important for us to share with others how we can be understood, it's also important for us to figure out how we are understanding others and how we're showing up in that space where it is a give and take, where we're giving and taking at the same time, and making sure that we are having effective conversation, or just being able to be understood as we go through our everyday lives. So let's hear some ways that you have potentially communicated, whether it was a give or a receive, that you have found to be helpful. Let's share with each other and see what we come up with here. I hope that this was meaningful for you, and if it was, please like, subscribe, share this out, and let's get chatting. See you guys back here next week for more fun. Bye.